Good morning. Welcome back to the second part of cardiac arrhythmia. And let us start with the basic explanations of different types of cardiac arrhythmias and the mechanisms which are responsible for causing this. As you all know, that abnormality of cardiac rate, rhythm, or both is called cardiac arrhythmia, and it results usually from abnormalities of electrical impulse generation, maybe conduction, or both. So these arrhythmias in the clinical setup, you will see that it may cause sudden death. Sometimes it so happen that it may result in syncope, and unless you are going for a ECG or rather a Holter monitoring, it's very difficult to diagnose the exact cause of syncope. As the cardiovascular system is intrinsically related to each other, it may lead to cardiac failure, that means the heart failure, or it may be manifested with simple dizziness or palpitation, which is palpitation is a very common feature of tachyarrhythmia. One of the most common tachyarrhythmia, that is paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, or nowadays which is been known as AV nodal re-entry phenomenon. Sometimes more likely it may not present with any symptoms, and that's the problem. So if you get or suspect something like that, you must always advocate your patient for Holter monitoring. That is the best possible way to diagnose a case of cardiac arrhythmia. So as I mentioned before, there are simplest type of arrhythmias which are seen in clinical practice. The bradycardia, where the heart rate is low, it's less than 60 uh, beats per minute, whereas in tachycardia it's going to be more than 100 beats per minute. But one thing you just have to understand, for everything you may not require medication. Sometimes the history taking is going to help you in this regard. And in case of tachycardia, sinus tachycardia, if anxiety and some other things are responsible, you may treat a patient even without giving any kind of antiarrhythmic medication. So never keep it in your mind that always pharmacotherapy is advocated in the treatment of cardiac arrhythmia. Now, sinus bradycardia is basically a result of abnormally slow automaticity, where it's maybe due to AV block. It's caused by abnormal conduction within the AV node or the distal AV conduction system. It may be happen due to the disturbance in the impulse propagation, or it may happen due to a problem or disturbance in the impulse formation, and this problem in the impulse formation mostly happen at the level of SI node. And this problem of impulse propagation may happen at any level. It includes exit block from the sinus node, conduction block at the level of AV node, and it may also affect impaired conduction in the His-Purkinje system. In case of tachyarrhythmias, when we are talking about tachycardia, is the simplest form of tachyarrhythmia. So tachyarrhythmias can be classified according to their mechanism. It includes your enhanced automaticity, which is basically spontaneous depolarization of atrial, junctional, or ventricular pacemakers. The triggered arrhythmias, it is initiated by after depolarization. It may be early after depolarization or late after depolarization, and immediately happening sometimes after cardiac repolarization. It may be seen during phase 3 or phase 4 of the action potential. And one of the most common reason, which is called the re-entry phenomenon, it can be called circus propagation of a depolarization wavefront. So different mapping or pacing maneuvers are typically performed during invasive electrophysiological testing and can often determine the underlying mechanism of a tachyarrhythmia. Accelerated automaticity may happen due to multiple reasons. It may occur due to increasing the rate of diastolic depolarization or changing at the level of threshold potential. So repeatedly you will be habituated of listening this term automaticity, threshold potential. By the term automaticity we mean the capacity of a cell to undergo spontaneous diastolic depolarization. In a normal heart it is maximum in the SA node. In the disease heart, other areas of the myocardium may develop automaticity and act as an ectopic focus. Whereas threshold potential is basically the level of intracellular negativity at which the abrupt and complete depolarization occurs. If the threshold potential is raised, that means it's changed from minus 70 towards more positive side like minus 60 millivolt, then the automaticity of the tissue is going to be suppressed. Beside these two, you will also hear two more terms. One is called excitability. It means the ability of a cell to respond to an external stimulus by depolarization. It depends on the level of resting intracellular negativity. If the negativity decreases, say from minus 90 to minus 60 or minus 70, the excitability of the cell increases. And lastly, you will be accustomed with this term called the conduction velocity of an impulse. It means that it is determined primarily by the slope of action potential and the amplitude of this phase 0. So in that particular tissue, any reduction in the slope leads to depression of conduction. So whenever you see the pictorial presentation, you have to remember these four terms: automaticity, excitability, threshold potential, and conduction velocity of an impulse. Now, in case of accelerated automaticity, you will see the abnormal automaticity may occur in virtually all cardiac tissues, which I mentioned before, and that is probably responsible for degeneration of a focus. And these changes are thought to produce sinus tachycardia, sometimes escape rhythms, and other accelerated AV nodal rhythms, including junctional rhythms. Now, when we are talking about the triggered automaticity, triggered activity, which is responsible for causing tachyarrhythmias, we're talking also about the after depolarization. And here you can see from the picture there are two types of after depolarizations being depicted in this figure. The first one is delayed after depolarization, and the second one is, the lower one is early after depolarization. The cellular feature which is common in the induction of delayed after depolarization is the presence of increased calcium load in the cytosol or in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And normally very common drug use is responsible for this, and that is digoxin. Digoxin related toxicity, as you know, the digoxin mechanism of digoxin is based on the fact that it is increasing the concentration of calcium in the myocardium. So this toxicity, the things like the catecholamines, adrenaline, because it's also, active by opening the L-type calcium channels, ischemia. So these are all responsible for enhancing calcium loading, and these are sufficient to produce delayed after depolarization. Accumulation of something like lysophospholipid in ischemic myocardium may lead to this consequent sodium and calcium overload, and this is also a mechanism for delayed after depolarization, which ultimately lead to triggered automaticity. Cells from different damaged areas and that survive myocardial infarction may display this type of spontaneous release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And this may generate waves of intracellular calcium elevation and arrhythmia. So this is about delayed after depolarization, which is responsible for the triggered automaticity. Now we are coming to the second one, that means the lower one, which is showing early after depolarization, and it occurs during the action potential and interrupt the orderly repolarization of the myocyte. Normally, early after depolarization have been thought to arise from action potential prolongation and reactivation of depolarization currents. But the recent experimental evidence suggested that a previously unappreciated interrelationship between intracellular calcium level or loading and early after depolarization. Cytosolic calcium may increase when action potentials are prolonged. In turn, it appears to enhance L-type calcium current, that means the phase 2 mostly, and the further prolonging action potential duration as well as providing the inward current driving early after depolarization. Intracellular calcium loading by action potential prolongation may also enhance the likelihood of delayed after depolarization. So the interrelationship among intracellular calcium early after depolarization and delayed after depolarization may be one explanation for the susceptibility of hearts that are calcium loaded. So think about ischemic condition or congestive heart failure where arrhythmia may develop due to this calcium overload. This early after depolarization may have some other causes. We are seeing in the clinical practice that few of these early after depolarization and associated QT prolongation is happening in case of hypokalemia, that means the potassium level is lower in plasma, hypomagnesemia and bradycardia, and most commonly drugs that can predispose to the generation of early after depolarization. Antiarrhythmics with class 1A and 3 actions, that means the drugs like quinidine and flecainide, they produce action potential and QT prolongation, and it's intended to be therapeutic but frequently causing arrhythmias because most of the drugs are not specific in action. Those antiarrhythmic drugs not only targeting the ectopic focus, it is not possible for them, they are also involving the normal tissue. So all antiarrhythmics are basically pro-arrhythmic in action, and not only 1A and drug and the drugs like amiodarone, and that means the class 3 drug, they are also having action on the action potential duration, and hence they are also responsible for generation of early after depolarization. There are some non-cardiac drugs like phenothiazines, that means probably chlorpromazine like drug, some antibiotics, maybe something like macrolide or a group of antibiotics, and there are some drugs like non-sedating antihistaminics. They are also prolonging a action potential duration and may predispose to early after depolarization mediated triggered arrhythmias. So decreased potassium level paradoxically may decrease membrane potassium currents, and basically it's a delayed rectifier current. That means mostly it's affecting the resting membrane potential in the ventricular myocyte. Explanation is given why hypokalemia causes action potential prolongation and early after depolarization. So both delayed after depolarization and early after depolarization may lead to triggered automaticity. So we have explained two mechanisms of tachyarrhythmia. The first one was automaticity, where obviously the resting membrane potential generation from the SA node, the balance between the catecholamines and the cholinergic system will come into play, where there is abnormality is seen, and this abnormality is seen in different clinical conditions like ischemia, in case of abnormality in the sinus, so sinus node, that means the SA node. And the second one we have discussed is basically the automaticity, the triggered automaticity, which is mostly triggered by early after depolarization and delayed after depolarization. So we have discussed two, and we are remaining with one, that is one of the most common cause of these kind of arrhythmias, and that is abnormal impulse conduction, which is also known as in the terms of cardiac arrhythmia as the re-entry phenomenon. So in the next slide we'll see how the re-entry is happening in different tissues. So this is one graphical presentation, pictorial presentation, which is showing the re-entry phenomenon and re-entry type of arrhythmia, which can be happened at the level above ventricle, which may be happened at the level of ventricle. And the main problem is lying on the fact that the impulse, which is should be traveled from above downwards from one tissue to another tissue, should die down after colliding with each other, but in this case it's not happening, whatever may be the zone which is going to be affected. So at the top you are seeing the normal tissue, whereas in the lower one you are seeing where we are observing the re-entry phenomenon, that means re-entry tachycardia in a different tissue. Now first you just have to look at this and then we'll go on explaining that thing. This is a normal impulse in a normal tissue. Unless there is any block, it's coming from both sides. The green line is indicating this is a normal one. Either it's going to be die down like the one which is being picturized in this figure, or from both the sides that has been diverted. The other one is also going in the reverse direction, colliding with each other and ultimately dying down, and that is the normal fate of an impulse or action potential. Whereas in case of re-entry tachycardia, what we are seeing, impulse is coming like that, there must be some blockage, and this particular thing is basically the blockage can be overcome in the reverse direction, because the blockage is basically acting as a it is having a kind of valve like action. So it's just allowing one side of the impulse to go through that. Now in this pathological condition, whatever may be the condition, maybe this obstruction is due to some anatomical blockage, maybe due to some myocardial infarction, tissue is damaged. So whatever may be the zone, you see the impulse is reversing back and it's actually affecting the tissues above, and this zone is basically responsible for the formation of an ectopic impulse. So if we discuss this in terms of clinics, so we just have to understand that it can occur around a fixed anatomic structure, which may be a myocardial scar, and with a stable pattern of cardiac depolarization moving in series over either retrograde limbs of the circuit or over the anterograde limb of the circuit. The form of re-entry, which is referred to as anatomic re-entry, or there may be an excitable gap re-entry, which can be seen in the practice. It is initiated when a depolarization wavefront encounters an area of unidirectional conduction block in the retrograde limb of the circuit. So the conduction across the anterograde limb occurs with a delay that, if of sufficient duration, allows for recovery of conduction in the retrograde limb with re-entry of the depolarization wave into the retrograde limb in the circuit. Sustained re-entry, which is happening here, which is being manifested here, requires that the functional dimension of this depolarized tissue, or the tachycardia wavelength, which is depicted as lambda, usually the sign is usually lambda, is equal to conduction velocity multiplied by refractory period, and fits within the total anatomic length of the circuit. It referred to as the path length. So when the path length of the circuit, that means this lambda is basically this path length, when it exceeds the lambda of the tachycardia, that means the region between the head of the activation wave and the refractory tail is referred to as the excitable gap. So anatomically determined excitable gap re-entry can explain several clinically important tachyarrhythmias, such as AV nodal re-entry, atrial flutter, some bundle branch re-entry. Even at the level of ventricle, you can explain with the thing with the same phenomenon. Those are ventricular tachycardia, ventricular tachycardia in SCARD myocardium. So you can explain most of the things with these re-entry phenomena. So just to recollect, the mechanism of re-entry occurs when a ring of cardiac tissues surrounds an inexcitable core in a region of SCARD myocardium. Tachycardia is initiated if an ectopic beat finds one limb refractory, and it results in unidirectional blockage. So there is one way of treating this is to form bilateral damage, bilateral blockage, and make the other limbs which is excitable, make it one which is non-excitable. It provided conduction through the excitable limb is slow enough. That means the other limb will have recovered and will allow retrograde activation. So basically the blockage is working like a valve. It is just allowing the retrograde transmission of one side of the impulse to complete this re-entry loop. If the time to conduct around that ring is longer than the recovery times, that means the refractory periods, usually it is the effective refractory periods where during which no such stimulus is good enough to change the nature of activation of a particular tissue, cardiac tissue within the ring, the circus movement will be maintained and it producing a run of tachycardia. In this case, catheter based and pharmacological therapies for re-entry arrhythmias, tachyarrhythmias, are quite successful in disrupting the anatomic circuit or alter the relationship between the wavelength and path length of the arrhythmia circuit, and it's eliminating basically the pathological conduction. So the drugs like amiodarone, which is a class 3 drug, which is prolonging the duration of action potential, is quite effective in this, but it is always better for anyone to go for catheter ablation or radio frequency ablation. It is often undertaken with the goal of identifying and destroying a critical limb of the re-entry circuit. So if you talk about the specific treatment, then one has to go for radio frequency ablation or catheter ablation, because never these antiarrhythmic drugs are going to be specific or give you a almost a complete cure in any case of cardiac arrhythmia. Due to the less defined pathways of myocardial activation seen in functional reentry, ablation of these rhythms tends to target initial triggers. That means if the pulmonary vein potentials in catheter ablation of atrial fibrillation rather than its anatomic circuit. Many of the structural heart disease may be associated with changes or conduction and refractoriness that increase the risk of reentry arrhythmias. Chronically, these ischemic myocardium exhibits a downregulation of the gap junction. Gap junction channel protein is one of the example is connexin 43, which is basically carrying the impulse from his Purkinje fibers to the ventricle, and it carries intracellular ionic current. Now, the border zones of this infarcted and failing ventricular myocardium exhibit not only functional alterations of ionic currents but also remodeling of tissue and altered distribution of gap junctions. The changes in gap junction channel expression and distribution is basically happening in combination with macroscopic tissue alteration. It supports a role for short conduction in reentry arrhythmias. Usually it is complicated by chronic coronary artery disease. So the aged human atrial myocardium exhibits some kind of altered conduction, manifest as highly fractionated atrial electrograms, and producing basically an ideal substrate for the reentry, and that may underlie the very common development of atrial fibrillation in the elderly. So here we can understand that these three things are commonly responsible for the mechanisms of tachyarrhythmia, the problem in the automaticity. There is a kind of triggered activity which is precipitated by early after depolarization or delayed after depolarization, where the calcium level is primarily playing the key role, and the most important one is the reentry phenomena.